Allora, buongiorno a tutti. Welcome everybody. This press conference will be in English. Welcome to the press conference of Exodus. As you know, the third season of Kingdom by Lars von Trier. And for me, it's a big pleasure to introduce you. The producer, Luis West. The actors Ida Engvall, Nicolas Bro, Nikolai Laikas, Bodil Jorgensen, and then we have on Zoom director Lars von Trier. Welcome. So as I said, this press conference will be in English, so if you please, are you kindly asked to make your question in English? And I will start with a question for Lars and for Louise. The third season of The Kingdom was a project that started a few years ago, then everything stopped. So why you decide to reopen the doors of The Kingdom and bring us to the very famous hospital, the most famous hospital in Denmark, and why now? Maybe Lars can start.
Yes, maybe Lars will know. I had a not so good time in my life, and I had different projects that could be started, but The Kingdom seemed at that time to be the easiest one to go to. So I took it as a pleasure to write it and had great fun. I don't know if it appears that way, but hopefully.
Yes, of course, it's a pleasure for me to be able to produce it. I wasn't involved in the first seasons, but it's been a journey, and I think with Lars, it's always interesting how the genre will be treated. So The Kingdom was something that I think a lot of people hoped for would actually be closed, because Lars from the beginning thought of a third season. So yeah, I think it's very, very nice that we now have the opportunity to see how it all ends.
Mm-hmm. And why, or did something change from the beginning, from the original project? Because a few years, you spent 4 years waiting for maybe the good story to tell. So something changed from the original project?
Lars should answer that question.
Yes, people died, you know. There was a lot of actors that died. So I had to make this little trick of maybe I should speak louder. We can. Do you hear me all right?
Yeah, it's perfect.
Yeah. Okay, good. I finished now.
Okay. Do you want to?
Yeah, I mean, I think the actors, and a lot of the actors from the first seasons are not with us anymore. So, of course, some of the storyline needed to change, and that's what we have been working for. Yeah.
Ci sono già delle domande in sala? C'è una domanda lì? Prego.
Hi, Jan-Olof Andersson from Aftonbladet, Sweden. A question for Lars. Why did you choose Mikael Persbrandt to play the son of Jerry Gård?
I have been a friend of Mikael for some years, and he helped me when I was in deep shit drinking a lot, and he had experience of that also. So he helped me, and then we became friends. And I wrote the part for him, not about him, but for him. And I'm very satisfied with the cooperation we had. He was very, very easy and joyful to work with.
And I would like to ask to actors how everything started for you, and how was the process that you started with Lars, the first meeting, and how was going on all the work with him?
Yes, it has. I worked also many years ago with Lars in The Idiots, and my name in The Idiots is also Karen. So I'm Karen, and I didn't die until I stayed alive to be Karen again in the kingdom. So in my world, it's the same woman, 30 years older, and it has been. Yes, it was for an actor to revive things after so many years. And then with Lars was you don't get these experiences much in an actor's life, I don't think. It has been fantastic, and I'm very proud of the result. And yes, Lars's story has come through, and we had some wintry. It was in February and March. We shot the thing in the kingdom, in the Copenhagen, and it was a fantastic nights and days we had together there. All of us, all the whole crew, the whole cast, with Lars in front. So it was a happy time for me, for all, I think.
Yeah.
Yes, and I think it has become this beautiful outro or exodus. Exodus is always also an entrance to something, and this it is like a poem almost, this long-lasting poem, I think, yeah. And the kingdom is a beautiful place to tell these stories, because a lot of I gave birth to children there, and we die there, and the rest are the spirits, and yeah, it is a very spiritual experience to watch the kingdom, I think. Yeah.
Nikolai?
How the whole thing started, I think it was. I think Lars had a plan about me being a part of this, and he called me if I wanted to be doing this. And as it is with Lars, I could see straight away that my character was very angry all the time. So he was like furious at all times, and every time when we started shooting, and I chose to play him like madman. He said, like he always do. He always directs. In percentage, sometimes it's at 100% down. So that was something that I was very comfortable coming back to from the edits that I also did with Bodil. And it's been honestly, it's been a pleasure for everyone. And I'm so fortunate when you do a show like this, you get to meet people that you would never meet up. Usually you get up, you hang out with the same crowd, but this time it was just like a much bigger diversity in terms of groups that you usually don't see. So that was a really fantastic experience. And to work with Lars again was something I've been looking forward to for a long time. Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Ida?
I got an email with a question if I wanted to join, and for me it was a dream email. And I met Lars a few times and some other people from the crew, so I flew to Copenhagen and we had some really nice meetings. We talked about the character and about the world and about life as well. And it was a process to just open up to be a part of the world that I also knew from watching the previous seasons. It was a huge honor to be a part of this, and I had fun with the character, and I loved working with Lars, and it's a really bodily experience, I think, just to watch his movies and also to be a part of it, and also to see the result of this. It's really it has such a beating heart, and it's a beautiful and hilarious world to be a part of. Yeah, it was great.
Body?
Yes, yeah, but how did it started? I have to go back to when I was 16 because I'm sort of a fanboy, So I really wished for this, and I was so lucky that when Lars had to make Nymphomaniac, his costume designer Manon, I made a movie with her, and she asked me, what would you like to do in the future? And I said, I would love to work with Lars von Trier. And she said, then write a letter. And I wrote a letter and said I could be a runner or something if I could. And then I had a small part. And for me it's a dream come true to be a part of it. I'm born on the kingdom, and I probably also will die on the kingdom. So also in that terms, and it's been maybe as a professional, it's been the most happiest time in my life. We filmed in the winter, and we, in the middle of the epidemic when it was worst, we went to the center of the epidemic, which was the kingdom, and made the whole movie. And I was like whistling and singing on my bike every day to work. It was incredible, fantastic. I feel extremely lucky. Thank you.
Thank you. So there is a question here.
Hello. I have a question for Mr. von Trier. I have a very fond memory of watching the first Kingdom, and this one looked very close to the original. But it feels very contemporary, and TV changed a lot during this year. So I want to ask you, what do you think about that? And do you think that the first one was ahead of its time? What do you think about nowadays TV series? Thank you. Bye.
I don't see very much television, so it's a little difficult to talk about how the state are. But I will say that the first episodes we made were much. We had very little time and very little money, and this time we had I think I worked on this one for 3.5 years or something. But how can I compare them? Well, I'm always looking at this. I feel older, of course, since it was 25 years ago we made the other one. And for me, an example of failure is when Bergman did Fanny and Alexander, because I've seen all Bergman's films, and I was definitely a fan. And then it seemed to me that he took the peaks from a whole career and put into one film that was very broad and very popular. And it's not that I just thought it was important to have a looser grip of the film. What I didn't know was that I was already ill when we started filming with this Parkinson I got. And I had a rotten time, but I hope the actors didn't notice. So, and I've been very happy for the support of all the actors. It's a little difficult. I didn't sit down and watch all the old ones. I think I was trying to get rid of the ties from the old stuff, and I only thought about the characters.
Mm-hmm. Do you want to add?
I was not trying to do something that's modern. I don't know, but I was not trying to revive. As I said, when I was writing the whole thing, it was pure joy. And therefore, if you go through the whole thing, you will see that there's a lot of mistakes and things that doesn't end or should have ended or whatever. But I hope that it has life.
Ci sono domande? And, Lee.
Hi, a question for Lars. You said in an interview 20 years ago in a book that you thought that season 2 of RIGET, The Kingdom, you thought that it was too much humor and too satirical, and that you always thought that if you wanted to go back to a third time, you had to be more black and more dangerous. Do you think that you succeeded?
No. No, I'm sure you're right, but don't ask me questions, because I'm always, just telling you about my thoughts, and for some reason the humor came very easy to me. Your problem. Did I say it to you? No. Okay, but no, it became also because I allowed the actors some freedom, we together could kind of reach this humoristic layer, and it was kind of felt right. But I'm sure I've said that by number 2. But at a certain time, I was the master of having trilogies, is it called, with only 2 films in them, because I never finished them. So I thought that the Kingdom I can't finish, and this is my bit.
Domande? Lì?
Hello there. Lars, it's great to see you via Zoom, and you mentioned your condition. I just wanted to ask how you are doing, and if you're planning on taking a break now or doing some more work, and yeah, what the latest is on that, and to send you best wishes as well, of course.
Thank you very much. I think I'm doing good, but the shaking will take some time to fight. But I feel better, but a little bit more stupid than I used to be. So that says a lot.
Lars, but also Louise, because all the self-irony you use when all the time you mention the first season, the second season of The Kingdom, how funny, how difficult was working on in the space between reality and fiction, because you are in a really funny space, and what kind of legacy still has The Kingdom in these years? I mean, how important is for the public that still remembers and maybe blame Lars for all the things he was telling in the series?
I think a lot of people have a little anxiety about hospitals, like Lars. He told me 1 week before we started that he was not sure that he could enter a hospital, and we needed to stay there for 12 weeks. So, no, but I think that we all have some kind of relationship to hospitals and know people that have been very ill, or we have been ourselves. So I think the public really relates to this, and with the humor that Lars is able to put into it. I mean, we kind of understand who we are, and we understand the relationship we have to doctors and to each other by putting in humor. And I think it's very special with Lars's humor that it kind of makes it possible for him to tell us about who we are and what is it to be Danish, and how are we actually able to survive this life. And I think he's brilliant at doing that, especially with the humor. Yeah.
Ci sono domande? My impression is that the rivalry between Swedish and Danish is even stronger this time, and which is something really specific, but at the same time also universal, because we laugh anyway, even if we don't know exactly what's going on between Swedish and Danish. So how did you work on this aspect, which is really funny?
Lars, do you want to answer that question?
Yeah, I would like to. We started with Ernst Hugo, the actor that played Helmer in the old episodes. And no, that was where the Swedish-Danish thing came in. And I have a love for Sweden. So I thought, who can I, really get tough on this time? And then I tried to be tough on Sweden, but I found out that when you see the whole thing, the Danish are the most stupid ones. So it really didn't succeed. But my father and my mother met each other in Sweden during the war because they were refugees. And I have been many times to Sweden, but it is, of course, since we're talking about quite small countries, there are, of course, always some kind of jokes that are always told about, for instance, Sweden's in Denmark. And I thought when I wrote this part for Mikael Persbrandt, I thought that he would be a typical Swedish man doing Swedish things, and it turned out that he definitely not became that, because his first line was something about who the homosexual was that came in, and that was very un-Swedish. So, but it is from a great love of Sweden. Yeah, I had a great time. So, especially when dialogue is writing itself, and they suddenly say something that was like the lawyer down in the cellar that says, he says, "How do you know?" And the lawyer says, "Because I'm also her solicitor." That surprised me, and that was more or less how it came out. And I must say to Ida that I was a little ashamed of the part because it was not good enough for her. So I hope that we can work again, and that is one of my plans, with some better material.
Well, my answer is yes. I'm very pleased for the part, and very much accept your apology. I'm blushing. Thank you, Lars.
Our time is up, so thank you very much, Lars, and thank you, everybody. Thank you for being here. Thank you. Allora, buongiorno, buongiorno a tutti. Conferenza stampa del film Bobi Wine, Ghetto President. Abbiamo con noi oggi il produttore John Batzek, il coregista Christopher Sharp e naturalmente il protagonista Bobi Wine. Welcome, benvenuti. Vorrei chiedervi subito, perché da questo diciamo nasce tutto, come è avvenuto il vostro incontro, da quale scintilla è nata l'idea di raccontare Bobi Wine e come si è sviluppato il progetto in questi anni e se ha cambiato forma, ecco, mentre proseguivate.
So I met Bobi and Barbie in 1997. No, yeah, 2019. Sorry, 2017. And I'd been born in Uganda, and my father was born in Uganda, so I had a big connection. I knew about Bobi's music before, so I was already a fan of him. And when I first met Bobi and Barbie, I was just amazed by them. I was firstly amazed by their courage, because I realized that Bobi had just become a member of parliament and he'd been this incredibly successful musician who had grown up in a ghetto in Kampala, and he had pulled himself out of that. He had become a huge musical star. Everything was going incredibly well for him. He had this most beautiful wife. He had 4 beautiful children. And then he decided to risk everything and become a member of parliament for an area in Kampala. And in a way, it just struck me as just such a crazy thing to do, because everything was so perfect. And I knew that anyone who stands against President Museveni, who'd been in power at that point for 35 years, was risking everything, because this is not a country which has elections as we know elections. This is a military dictatorship, and Museveni doesn't tolerate people who stand against him. And I knew he particularly wouldn't tolerate someone like Bobi Wine, who through his music was able to communicate with the people. Uganda has an incredibly young population. The average age is, I think it's 16 now, and 80% of people are under 35. So Bobi was able to connect with them. And when I met Bobi and I heard the story, I mean, it sounded like a synopsis for a feature film. And I thought, this is such a compelling story. And because I had this big connection with Uganda, I felt that we really need to make a film. And Bobi said yes, and then I met up with Moses, who was my co-producer, who is a Ugandan and a fantastically brave and courageous man. I'm afraid he's not with us today. He's a co-director. He's actually just gone to Telluride, so we'll be all meeting up with him. But he was the co-director on the film, and together we were able to follow Bobi for 5 years, and that's how we met.
Mm-hmm. And John, how il fatto di seguire Bobi in 5 anni che hanno cambiato la sua vita e magari chissà in futuro anche il destino di un intero paese, è stata un'operazione pericolosa, perché sembra che tutto quello, da quello che si vede nel documentario, tutto quello che ruota intorno a Bobi a un certo punto diventa materia che scotta, diventa pericoloso.
I mean, in many respects, that's a better question to ask Chris and or Bobi. I was safely in London as the producer, watching footage and sitting in an edit and helping Chris and the editor edit the film. But you heard the question.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, it's extremely dangerous, and it became more and more dangerous. Moses was at the forefront when it became particularly dangerous towards the end during the election, and he actually was shot at, and he was shot in the face, and he actually spent some days in prison. Anyone in Uganda associated with BOBI runs great risks. People disappear, people get tortured, it's fraught. And we were just talking about it just before we came in here. They deliberately pick people up, torture them, and the aim behind that is to make other people afraid. So anyone who's seen to be filming BOBI or supporting BOBI is really, really in trouble. So yeah, it was incredibly dangerous. I mean, BOBI will tell you what has happened to people around him.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Now, at such a time, I don't know what exactly to talk about and what not to talk about, because it's so much. As a matter of fact, I was almost complaining to my producer that the impunity is not shown to its maximum, and he was explaining to me that we cannot just show violence, violence, violence. It's terrible what's up there, what's happening. I'm just glad that this film is giving opportunity for the first time to show to the Western world what exactly is happening in Uganda. For 36 years now, General Museveni has been very smart. He has succeeded in painting a rosy picture to the world out there and to keep the oppression of the people of Uganda covered up. I hope we can show it. Of course, while I speak here, many of my friends are missing, many others are in prison, and many are underground, killed by the regime. So apart from the questions that you will ask me and I'll be answering one by one, I don't know where to start and where to end.
Ecco, allora una delle domande è l'idea di essere protagonista, diciamo, di una storia che poi è una storia, la storia di un uomo, è la storia di un musicista, è la storia di un aspirante presidente. Ecco, tutto questo la spaventava o l'ha percepita subito come un'opportunità, come dire, che non si poteva trascurare?
For me, it was neither a choice nor an opportunity. I did not get into this because I was brave. No, I keep getting scared every now and then. There was no option, you know. While I know that it's dangerous to be doing this, there's one thing that is more dangerous, doing nothing at all. The danger now is focused on me and the people that dare to support the ideals that I represent. But there's a bigger danger for people out there that are voiceless and need somebody to speak out for them. So I've been keeping away from politics for a long time, and I was comfortable. Back home, it's comfortable not to think. The safest thing is to ignore the injustices that are ongoing. Unfortunately, I come from the ghetto, and I knew that if I don't rise to the occasion to represent these people, then nobody would, especially in this time where all the intellectuals, all the professionals are feeling safer, not antagonizing the regime, carrying on their comfortable lives, and hoping that maybe a miracle will happen. I didn't believe in miracles like I don't believe in them now, and I believe that we had to do something about it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Quello che accade in Africa e nella maggior parte dei paesi dell'Africa non arriva nelle news né in Europa né negli Stati Uniti probabilmente. Allora mi chiedo, e questo magari John può risponderci, in questo caso, proprio in questo caso il cinema può essere un veicolo importante e insostituibile perché, come dire, quantomeno si sia informati di quello che accade, non dico avere una coscienza, ma almeno che anche in Europa e in America si conosca quello che sta accadendo in questi paesi.
Absolutely, yes, and that's the great power of cinema. And in the case of this film, I'm delighted to say that as soon as we started showing the film, amazing festivals, not least Venice, the best of them all, selected the film, and off the back of Venice, we're heading straight to Telluride, which is one of the preeminent festivals in America, and we have invitations to play in festivals, all over Europe and all over the world, that we're considering at the moment. So it's an incredibly effective way of bringing this story to as many people as possible. Not least, it's a 2-hour-long film. People can sit down and they can get the whole of Bobby's story, in one sitting and get to understand, because he's so articulate and so brilliant at how he tells his story, him and Barbie. It's an opportunity for people to really profoundly understand the situation in Uganda in a way that would take, normally if you didn't have a film like this, it would take a tremendous amount of time and effort and writing, and people would have to go to great effort to learn about this story. So, it's incredibly gratifying, as I said, first of all, to be here, but then to have all these other places wanting to show the film, reacting positively to the film, and enabling us to get the story to as many people as possible.
Mm-hmm. Sure. La musica è un veicolo importante per quello che Bobby vuole comunicare, ed è naturalmente anche il cuore del film. Ecco, come avete lavorato per integrare la musica nel racconto, e poi mi chiedo se Bobby non fosse stato un musicista, se avesse avuto la stessa opportunità di farsi conoscere e ascoltare oppure no.
I'll start with that. Yeah, when we started making the film, obviously we had to make a lot of decisions. We shot thousands and thousands of hours of footage over the 5 years. The music, most of the music in the film is actually telling the story. So it's about what's going on, it's about Bobby's message, it's about the plight of Ugandans, it's about corruption, and it's about violence. So we decided to use the music to tell the story, and all the lyrics in the film are actually critical to the story, and they tell it so well. Bobby uses his music and his lyrics to communicate with people. Back home, he's not allowed to perform, he's not allowed to play on radio stations, but when you walk through the streets, you hear Bobby Wine's music blaring everywhere. So you can't suppress music, because if people love it and it touches them, they're going to find a way to listen to it. And we knew that what made the film so incredibly special actually was the music. We didn't want to just make this another story about, this despot and elections that were unwinnable because it was a military dictatorship. We wanted to show the whole thing through Bobby and Barbie's eyes and those close to them. I mean, Bobby said to us at the end, you've just shown so little violence. We interviewed lots of people who'd been tortured. I mean, just unspeakable, almost medieval torture. And we had long discussions with John and with Paul, the editor, and Moses. And we were like, how much of this do we show? And at the end of the day, we thought it was going to be far more touching and far more real and far more effective to show the pain through Bobby and Barbie and what their children had to go through and what all the people close to Bobby had to go through. And I think that's what makes the film successful, is you get to know these wonderful, incredible, brave, courageous people, and you live with them. You live the 5 years and you see what had happened to them.
And also, if I can just add, the lyrics of the songs are in the movie, and so you get to see Bobby's writing, really, and because the lyrics are so powerful and deliver the message so clearly, and it's rare in a movie, a documentary or any movie, for you to actually have the lyrics on screen, but Chris wanted to and Moses wanted to integrate that in a very clear way so that audiences are not mistaken in any way about what it is Bobby's saying, and I think it works really effectively.
Bobby, mi chiedevo se I suoi figli hanno visto il film e che cosa ne pensano.
Well, my children have not watched the film, but they know that a film will be out someday, because they saw the cameras around us and they got used to them. I don't know what my children think, but what I have taught them to understand is that everything is real. And in the beginning, my wife tried to keep this violence, this oppression away from the children, until my wife and I agreed that this is part of us. And the sooner the children understand the reality that we're dealing with, the better. Because in the past, my children thought it's only criminals that are taken to prison. But for the many times that their father's been taken to prison, I had to be honest with them, for them to understand that, you know, this is the reality that we are dealing with. So yeah, my children know about it. My children had to grow up much earlier than their age, because that's the reality they are facing. Yeah.
E cosa sta accadendo in questi mesi nella sua vita?
Well, what's happening in the recent months in my life and in the lives of many people is not very different from what has been happening. I continue to be, you know, harassed by the government. I'm literally an illegal citizen in Uganda. Not legally, but practically. I cannot attend a public gathering without being, you know, followed. I cannot be allowed on radio, TV stations. My music is banned. I cannot perform. But that is personal. That wouldn't be so much of a pain. But the abductions of the people that are around me and those that support me continues. Just this morning, another friend was abducted and, you know, is still missing. The, you know, extrajudicial killings continue, although now there's a big effort to gag the media. The local media does not talk about it. It is social media that talks about it, which social media is also, you know, gagged. Facebook is banned in Uganda by the president. And, you know, there's every effort to silence not just me, but all voices of dissent in Uganda. The oppression continues, the violence continues, the state-sanctioned abductions continue. The situation continues, although there's much less attention of international media to Uganda since the end of the election. But the government continues to do what it has been doing in the past. Yeah.
Christopher, è stato citato più volte il lavoro di montaggio. Avete girato moltissimo materiale, ma poi si trattava di, appunto, di trovare una sintesi che restituisse il dolore di questa battaglia, insomma, che va avanti. Che criteri avete usato per selezionare i personaggi magari che ruotano intorno a Bobby o alle situazioni da raccontare?
Yeah, we had, as I said, we had thousands and thousands of hours of footage, so we had to be extremely, extremely careful. I think we sort of made a decision just to make it as personal as possible about Barbie and Bobby, and Bobby's singing partner Nubian, and Bobby's right-hand man, who's a guy called David Lewis. So we sort of stuck with them. Obviously, there's lots of other characters in the film, but we really focused on what they were going through. And what was just incredible, and then when we started, I just couldn't believe the access Bobby and Barbie gave us, because it was so intrusive. And we were in their houses. There was never, unless they were doing a particularly sensitive political meeting, there was never a time when they said, stop filming. And sometimes I would just be like, I cannot believe they're allowing us to film this moment of personal anguish. You know, you'd think Bobby or Barbie would say, guys, please stop. This is so personal. You know, Barbie's crying, or, I mean, stop, you know. And they didn't do that. And it was extraordinary. Also, it kind of made me feel that they had nothing to hide. So it wasn't like they were trying to edit the film or they were trying to edit what we saw or what we might use. There was just total faith. And I think the faith came out of the fact they were being honest. There was nothing to hide. There was no other motive. This was what they were doing, and it was very, very straightforward. So we ended up with just a massive amount of material, which obviously makes it very difficult because you have a lot to go through and you have a lot to think about. But I think, you know, with John's help, and then we had this incredible editor, Paul Carley, we got something where we were all pretty comfortable with, and it's personal, which always means more.
E questo è un racconto che sarebbe potuto proseguire ancora, perché la storia appunto non ha raggiunto la parola fine. Quando avete deciso che, come dire, era il momento di fermarsi?
Well, we sort of thought that the elections would be the full stop. We knew that it was absolutely impossible that Bobby would win the election, because you don't win elections in Uganda. But we always thought once the election's over, we'll stop. But then we sort of kept going a bit longer than we thought. And we were editing for 2 years, so we were editing way before the elections. We were already editing, so we didn't know how the film was going to end. We didn't know what was going to happen. The constant fear was whether Bobby would be killed. You know, Barbie would quite often phone me up and she'd be in tears and she'd say, you know, there's terrible things happening, that thing's happening. But we just didn't know, and it was, you know, awful for them, and also for us it was incredibly stressful, because you just never knew how this story was going to end, and whether Bobby would make it. And a lot of his friends and people around him sadly didn't make it, but Bobby is still here. So we did the elections, and then you know, there was various things we had to cover, because Bobby's main team and his best friends, not just political friends but musical friends, his producer Dan Magic and his singing partner Nubia, were locked up in military dictatorship for 6 months. No, they were charged with treason, I think it was. I mean,
yes, treason.
And they were locked up for 6 months. So Bobby lost for the election. How many months before the election did they?
Oh, they locked them a week to the election.
A week before the election, he lost all his support. They were all taken away from him. So he was totally alone. And then for another 5 months after the election, all his friends were in prison. So, I mean, you know, and you don't know what's happening to them. I mean, just unbelievably stressful. So they were alone. And as you know, anyone who's seen the film ends up with Bobby and Barbie, after all of this incredible effort, thousands of people, all this love, they're just in their house alone. That's it. They've just been left alone, and they're surrounded by the military, and it's just their friends are all in prison, and you can imagine how terrible it was for them, and how extraordinary.
And I must just quickly add, I rather naively, I didn't know that there was no chance that Bobby could win the election. I don't have the understanding of Uganda that Chris has, etc. So actually, even up until the election, I kept calling Chris saying, you know, has he got a chance? You know, how's it going to go? How's it going? And it was heartbreaking, really. You know, it was heartbreaking. That the truth is that he didn't have a chance, because when you see the film, you'll see it's so clear that the majority of people desperately want him to be the president, and he went about his campaign in such an authentic and honourable way that the idea that actually there was never a chance for him to win hadn't occurred to me, and it was shocking to discover that that's the actual truth.
Ci sono stati dei momenti in cui avete temuto di non poter andare avanti, cioè, qual è stato veramente il momento più difficile di tutte queste riprese?
I think there was a time in 2018 when Bobby, I mean, it's a big part of the film where Bobby went campaigning, and he was sitting in the car, and he moved seats, and his driver moved into the seat, and his driver was wearing the same clothes as he was wearing, and someone came up and killed him and shot him, and it was very clear that they intended to kill Bobby. Bobby was then trapped in a hotel. He was hiding in a room. Barbie was getting messages from him, and Barbie was telling me what was going on, and we really thought he was going to die. I mean, we thought, so that was just awful, because we thought that this is the end, and it's just, you know, a young family and a wife, and it's just too terrible for words. But somehow he survived, and he survived because there was the international community and the international, well, not so much the political community, but journalists all over the world came to his rescue, and people like the New York Times and the BBC and the Guardian and all these wonderful platforms came to his rescue. I think just one thing I'd like to say is, I think one of the disappointing things I felt, and I know Bobby's more an optimistic and a more generous person than me, but one of the things we felt at the end, when all of this, Bobby had stood up for democratic values that in the West and in the developed North we profess to hold so dear. We say, this is our values, we believe in democracy, we believe in it. But when someone stands up and has exactly those values, it was disappointing the way the international political community, they all came out and said, oh, the elections were terrible, you know, blah, blah, blah. They hadn't been able to send any monitors. Isn't this awful? You know, it's terrible. And then within a month, you know, they were all back doing deals with Museveni and, you know, arranging military things. And I just, you know, one of the reasons we're just so thrilled to be in Venice and be at these festivals is if the entertainment industry can support people like Bobby, they should support people like Bobby, and it's wonderful that journalists and people in entertainment and Venice and all these festivals are prepared to stand with what we know is right.
Mm-hmm. Sì, e ci auguriamo che questo magari possa accadere dopo Venezia, speriamo. Il nostro tempo è scaduto. Molte grazie per essere qui a Venezia con questo film. And good luck.
Thank you. Thank you for having us. Okay.
Hello. Buongiorno e benvenuti alla conferenza stampa di Living. Vi presento subito gli ospiti al tavolo, che sono i produttori Elizabeth Carlson e Stephen Woolley, lo sceneggiatore Kazuo Ishiguro, gli attori Alex Sharp, Amy Bluewood e Bill Knight, e il regista Oliver Hermanus. Welcome, benvenuti. Se ci sono delle domande alzate bene la mano. Io vorrei cominciare subito con una domanda sull'origine del progetto. Do you need to wear your headphones for a translation?
Well, if it's becoming Italian.
Yeah.
Okay.
Also Bill? Okay. Yeah, it's also for you. Allora, volevo appunto farvi la prima domanda sull'origine di questo progetto. Sappiamo che c'è stata una conversazione tra produttori e sceneggiatore, alla quale ha partecipato anche Bill Knight. Insomma, nell'occasione di quel drink, di quell'incontro, è successo qualcosa. Vorrei che ci raccontaste un po' proprio la scintilla da cui è partito tutto.
Yes, it's true that I went to...
The button?
It's good morning.
You don't have to...
I'm doing very well
No.
technically. It's going... Oh, once, okay. It's going very well. Good morning and thank you for having us. Yeah, it's true. I went to dinner with Stephen Woolley and Elizabeth Carlson, the two great British film producers with whom I've made 2 films, 3 films? 4 now. And the other guests were Mr. Ishiguro and his wife Lorna. And at one point they went into a kind of huddle, and they came out of the huddle towards the end of the evening, and Mr. Ishiguro said, we know what your next film should be. And I said, well, when you're ready, let me know. And later, Stephen Woolley rang me with the idea that, Mr. Ishiguro's idea that we should reimagine, I'm avoiding the word remake, the Kurosawa movie, Ikuru. And then it was then decided that he himself would adapt it, which was a great development. And it made me think that perhaps I'd been very, very good in a previous life, that such gentlemen should assemble and arrange something as marvelous as this, because the part is a great part and the script was a magnificent script. And Oliver Hermanus is a brilliant director who we attracted to the project, and Jamie Ramsey is a great cinematographer. So everything was very, very desirable and attractive, and I'm a lucky guy.
Elizabeth, would you add something? Vuole aggiungere qualcosa?
Sorry?
No, for Elizabeth.
Sorry.
Can you push the button?
My partner Stephen, who we run Number 9 with, have worked together for decades, and we tend to lead on one project. And I have to say that after the initial meeting that we all had together, this is one that Stephen led, and he and Bill and Ishiguro have established this fantastic creative relationship. And Stephen had seen Oliver's absolutely brilliant film Moffy first and said that I should watch it, and we both decided that it was, I think Oliver is truly one of the great contemporary directors, as he's shown in his previous work and in Living. And so I really have to hand to Stephen in terms of producing it and pulling it all together, and the team assembled here before you.
Mm-hmm. Stephen.
Everything everyone said is true.
And Mr. Ishiguro, Kurosawa, i film di Kurosawa sono stati spesso i film.
I didn't know which language we were in. But...
I film di Kurosawa sono stati I film di Kurosawa sono stati spesso fonte di ispirazione per altri film. Che cosa la attirava di questa storia?
I'm sorry, I'm not getting my interpretation through.
What attracted you? I can
the Kurosawa movies are very often.
Doesn't seem to be connected to that box. Yeah.
Allora, ripeto, i film di Kurosawa sono stati spesso fonte di ispirazione per altri film. Che cosa l'attirava di questa storia in particolare e come ha lavorato per trasportare la scena dal secondo dopoguerra giapponese in Gran Bretagna?
Yes, I was always aware that there's a very distinguished tradition in cinema of adapting films from Akira Kurosawa into other cultures and other languages. So, of course, we have Sergio Leone's Fistful of Dollars, we have John Sturges' Magnificent Seven, and, of course, Star Wars, and many other films, I think. And so I think it's always interesting to look at Kurosawa films and ask what would happen if you move them from the Japanese setting to another setting. But I think the important thing is you have to ask, is there something you can add? Is there something new and valuable that you can bring by doing that? Otherwise, it's pointless. Most of the Kurosawa films are masterpieces or close to masterpieces. But all my, since I was quite young, a teenager, I've always dreamt of a version of Ikiru set in the kind of England I remembered myself when I was a child and first came to England, or perhaps the England just before I was born, in the 1950s. And I'm also a huge fan of the British movies of that period, made during and after the war. And so I thought it could be a fantastic idea to bring this kind of a version of the old British cinema with the old English gentlemen with bowler hats, and marry this with this great Kurosawa script. So that was always my idea. So and it became a kind of dream come true when I found people who are willing to do this. I never intended to write the screenplay myself. I just gave this as an idea to professional filmmakers. But perhaps foolishly, Stephen asked would I like to try to do a screenplay myself. Because as you know, I'm usually a novelist, not a screenwriter. But so that's how it happened, and I just wanted someone to go and make this film, not necessarily me. But I'm now really proud that I'm a part of it.
In attesa, sì, vorrei introdurre solo una domanda per il regista. Non è casuale forse che il regista non sia inglese? Questo ha consentito forse di aggiungere, di arricchire il film con un punto di vista ancora diverso. Mi chiedo se questa è una delle ragioni e a che punto è entrato nel progetto e che cosa rappresentava per lei questo nuovo punto di vista.
Yes, it was definitely a fearful proposition to remake a Kurosawa movie, but I honestly took my encouragement to do this from Stephen and from Ishiguro, because they were very confident that this was something we should do and that they were already doing. And I think that there has been a tradition in British cinema of working with directors who are not from England and who have a different point of view on life there. But I think one of the key ways that I stepped into it was to take inspiration from a lot of the films that they were both sharing with me, which showed the cinema of the 40s and the 50s from the United Kingdom. And I think that my interpretation of the story and how Jamie and I went about photographing it was very much influenced a lot by the cinema of that place as well as the actual history of that place.
Lì e poi lì. Il signore qui.
Hi, Stephen Schaefer here from the Boston Harold. Bill, I wonder if you went back and watched the Kurosawa movie, or you were afraid to be sort of contaminated by that performance and just do your own version? And is it different when there is a reimagining or a remake from the way you do other films that are original films?
I did watch the film. I'd never seen the film, and when the suggestion was made, I then watched the film, and I admired it tremendously. And then there was a huge gap between me watching the film and making the film. So normally I wouldn't watch the film, and it was a bit reckless, I think, in retrospect, to watch the film, because it's not necessarily helpful for me to watch someone else act the role, although it's not precisely the same role, nor is it precisely the same film, as mentioned. And if I were making a film, for instance, of a book that I hadn't read, I would not read the book, because that's not always helpful. There's information in there that I don't need, and there may be things I would miss. And the book is not the film, neither is the script, and the film is the film. So in this case, it didn't really, I don't think, influence the way in which I performed, but the atmosphere and the general spirit of the original movie, I hope, to some degree, did.
When you say a big gap, was that months or years?
I think it was probably years. Yeah. I can't really remember, but I'm not very good at that. But it was a long time because, you know, it's tough to get films made.
Allora, c'è la signora lì e poi arriviamo qui.
Thank you. Mr. Hermanis?
Yes.
Margaret Gardner from the Sunday Times, South Africa. Hello. So nice to see you here.
Thank you.
So few South African directors actually get to make it on the international stage. Do you think that being an outsider lends itself to this particular movie? And also, just if you could talk about what you think it's about you and your heritage that has helped you as a director, please.
Yes, I suppose in the South African film industry, I was a bit of an outsider because I was making work that was incredibly aggressive, a lot of which was premiered here in Venice. And so it felt really interesting and exciting to make a film that was, one, not set in South Africa, but would also be a total different tone for me, to make a film where audiences weren't having blood pour from their eyes at the end of the screening or screaming as they left the theater. So that was a scary proposition. I mean, obviously I've spoken a lot about my heritage and how that's been a challenge as a filmmaker and how hard it was to become a filmmaker because of the nature of the history of South Africa and the personal history of my family. But I think those were things that just pushed me even harder to want to be a filmmaker. And a day like today and showing a film like this with this extraordinary team of people is hopefully just going to be inspiration for other filmmakers from where I'm from to suffer through all the things and push really hard and work really hard. So that's hopefully what I can do in this regard. Sure.
Prego.
Hello, this is Matic Majcem from the newspaper Večer from Slovenia. I have a question for Mr. Ishiguro. Since you're very familiar with both cultural context, with the Japanese and the British, I'd just like to know, do you feel that there are any major differences in how this same story applies to both very different countries and cultures? Thank you.
I think the two cultures, particularly immediately after the war, shared many things in common. But it comes back to this question of, Bill being in the central part. I have to say, when I wrote the screenplay, it was written absolutely with Bill Nighy in mind, not just his dialogue lines, the entire film. And how I wanted it to be different when I was writing the screenplay from the Japanese version was something to do with the emotions with which a character in this situation would face this crisis, this knowledge, not only that you had a cancer and you were going to die, But in some ways, the more interesting question, so, how do I make my life mean something? I think there's a big difference between the main character in the Kurosawa film and the character that Bill portrays. And I think that is something to do with, the big difference between the Japanese culture and the British culture of that time. If you like, the stiff upper lip Englishmen who continue to try and make light of things right up until the very end. So for me, the idea of Bill playing that part was absolutely central to how we changed it from a Japanese character to this very ultra-British character.
Scusate, prima di darvi la parola, io però vorrei coinvolgere in questa conversazione anche Alex Aimé, e ad Alex Sharp vorrei chiedere qualcosa sul suo personaggio che nel film precedente credo non avesse lo stesso spazio, quindi avete arricchito il personaggio di Peter. In che modo l'avete costruito insieme con il regista?
Okay, hello. Yeah, it's the character didn't really exist in the original film, and I think Mr. Ishiguro would probably be better to answer the question as to why he was woven in for sort of narrative reasons. But in terms of developing the character, Oliver and I zoomed many, many times and just discussed who he was in relation, and really like the journey that he goes on, where he needs to start, and to set up where he goes and how he's almost, you kind of see things through his lens in some ways. So yeah, it was just about being super clear and making someone who felt really real and very sort of yearning to be alive, but also very like off balance in a new environment, and so that the audience could kind of go on the journey through him.
Mm-hmm. E per Aimé, appunto, come si è avvicinata a questo personaggio cruciale per, diciamo, la rinascita di quest'uomo che, come dire, paradossalmente sta per morire, ma vive come non ha mai fatto prima?
Yeah, I think that I was talking about this earlier, that they just start to really see each other. Like they really start to see each other, these two characters. They've been in the same space for kind of 18 months, and they've kind of looked at each other, but they haven't seen each other. And I think that's all that we really need sometimes, is someone to just see us and connect with us. And I think that it's very small and it's very simple, but that can, make for rebirth, because you are seeing yourself as well through someone else's eyes, and they're seeing you as a kind of bigger, greater version of yourself. Because Mr. Williams does that for Margaret too, when he says, I saw you and you were this. She doesn't think that about herself. And so there's a lot of her that's also reborn through him. So it's definitely a very mutual thing, but I think a lot of it is just that they start really paying attention to each other. And I think a lot of the time love is just paying attention. So and that's kind of what the film's about, is it's about someone who's stopped paying attention. And then they do, and then they realise, oh wow, look at what I've been missing. So I think that's really all it is, they just pay attention to each other. Yeah.
Ora un po' di domande, c'era la signora lì in azzurro, vuole ancora fare una domanda? Sì? Ok, sorry. Do you still want to make a comment? Okay.
Mr. Ishiguro, question to you. I am Oksana from Central Asia, came 5,000 kilometers from my motherland. I would like to ask you about cinema. It was originated as an entertainment initially, but after Fellini made La Dolce Vita, people start to say that cinema is art. What movie makes you think that cinema is a real art?
In a way, today, I think that's an eccentric question. I think cinema, I don't see how anyone can question that cinema is an art. And I'm not even sure if La Dolce Vita is the turning point. I think when we look back over a lot of what was supposed to be popular entertainment, particularly it came out of Hollywood or out of Germany in the 1930s, we realized that we're looking at great art, although it was initially prepared as popular entertainment. If you look at Pabst, Fritz Lang, the screwball comedies, Billy Wilder, Preston Sturges. I mean, and long before, and of course, the great era of Japanese cinema was the 1950s too. I mean, I think it's very hard for anyone to argue that cinema is entertainment any more than you could say music is not art. I mean, it seems crazy to me. I don't know what other people think of this idea, but of course, one of the wonderful, I mean, the Venice Festival, along with other festivals like Cannes, has had a major impact, I think, on making us think of cinema as one of the really important art forms, not just as one of the art forms, as one of the perhaps the great art forms of our age. And as someone coming from literature, I always feel we are struggling against this bigger art form of cinema.
Allora, c'erano delle domande lì, poi qui la signora in verde che aveva la mano alzata da un po'.
Thank you. Maestro Mazzetto, I have a question for the director. In the movie we see that's a particular format. Nowadays we are the expanded version. It's a bit tight than usually. Do you take inspiration from Kurosawa works for this, or also for the atmosphere of the movie, the visual aspect, or do you have other references?
Yes, so the aspect ratio is a slightly made-up one. The DOP and Jamie and I actually used that aspect ratio on our previous film. It's the same, exactly the same size, and it felt right to me. Watching the films that Stephen and Mr. Ishiguro would share with me, I became kind of accustomed to seeing it all again like that. And in fact, a lot of those films are even squarer. And I just sort of imagined living through that frame. And I think what I like about that frame is that it forces you to really think about portraiture, and the way that you photograph actors' faces becomes quite central and quite regimented, and I'm slightly OCD about everything being kind of straight and perfect. So it felt right, and it did, I think, just in another level, hopefully unlock that living is in celebration of a pre-existing style of cinema.
Prego. Sì, arriviamo. Prego.
Thanks a lot for the movie. It felt really warm and human. I've got a question about music and the song, and not only one song, but the main song which Mr. Nye's character sings. How did you come up with this idea, and how was it for you, Mr. Nye, to sing and to put your meaning into this music? Thank you.
I'm glad you asked this question, because the person to answer this question is Mr. Ishiguro, because the song was something that he had in the screenplay from the very beginning, and I think it actually holds greater meaning, and so all I did was force Bill to sing it, really. But I think, Ishiguro, you know the history.
Well, I was watching Bill perform in the film called Their Finest, and he sang a Scottish song called Wild Mountain Thyme, and I thought he sang it very well. And the lady sitting at the back there's a Scottish lady sitting at the back there who is my wife, and she has sung this particular song that is featured in Living for the last 30 years. I don't know any recording of it, or I don't know any famous person singing it. I just know it from my wife singing it. She sings it almost as well as you, perhaps better. And when I was thinking of what, the main character, what would be the right one emotionally, I thought we don't want a song that directly references the themes of the film. That just wouldn't work. But somewhere at the emotional level, it had to be the correct one. he's remembering an older, a past life, and perhaps the wife he has lost, and I had to have all these things. So I thought that was the perfect song. But it was one of those intuitive things, and I was very grateful that Oliver didn't insist on changing it for some 90s rock song or something. Yeah?
I did think about it.
Il signore qui.
Hello. Japanese newspaper Yomiuri Shimbun, staff writer OK. Mr. Ishiguro, Ikiru is a very popular film in Japan. And Mr. Ishiguro, you are a respected writer in Japan. I am very happy that you wrote the script for living. Some questions. Please tell me what is the meaning of producing living now? And it is a story that leads to your roots in Japan.
I think there is a relevance to not just Japanese audiences, but audiences everywhere in today's society. Because although our film is set in the post-war period, I think so many people now ask this question of themselves, that they're working and working and working in some environment, perhaps an office environment, perhaps some other kind of environment, and they're not at all sure whether the work they do has any meaning or contributes to the richness of their lives or to the lives of anybody around them. They're not quite sure if their working life is actually part of their real living life. And I think this is something that, particularly in the West, as we have become consumed by this capitalist culture, and we're working all the time. I think this is a question that people have been asking themselves. And I think particularly the pandemic has made people stop and consider the relationship between what they do at work and what their life should really be about, and the fact that each of us have only very short lives. So I feel, whether it's for Japanese audiences or for people in the West, or in Europe, or here in Italy, I'm hoping that this is a film that will speak to particularly younger generation very much. And sometimes it's easier for people to see their lives when they look at a life in a different world or a different period. And I'm hoping that Living will be able to do this.
Abbiamo un'ultima brevissima domanda qui, la signora bionda.
Hello, Serena from Loud and Clear Reviews. Thank you for this incredible film. My question was to the cast. This performance is amazing, and I was wondering, because I know a lot of it lies in the writing, that it just feels like there's so much history and so much, emotionally speaking, that these characters each bring with them, and you don't necessarily have to say it, and you don't even have so many scenes with each other, and yet as an audience you absolutely feel it. And I was wondering about the work that each of you has done to bring this to us.
Sì, no, non era proprio una brevissima domanda, ma cercheremo di sintetizzare.
Well, Oliver actually wrote us backstories for our characters, and that was really helpful. And also, I think we had a lot of time with them, because from getting the part to filming, there was quite a big gap. So for once, it just felt like I had a lot of time with that character. But also, we just really get on. Like, we just really like each other. And I think we were spending time with each other, as ourselves. So then when it just felt very, from the beginning, we all just felt very, I don't know, we were all just, I don't know, I was just, we were just friends. And I think that's probably what comes through. And because, like you say, it is, you don't have that many scenes with each other, so you also really relish the moments that you have with each other. And I think that is also very like the film, is relishing each moment that you've shared. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. And I think also the energy on a set is quite, one of the biggest challenges as an actor is to kind of conserve your energy and be in the right emotional place for that day, that scene. And Oliver created a sort of, it felt like a magical bubble, which was like almost like a protective bubble of like the story. It was like it was a super relaxed environment and very collaborative, but it was super focused on the story and on the character.
Mm-hmm. Maybe Bill wants to add the very last thing. Can you push the button? The button?
There you go.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Yes, what was the question? No, sorry, I got it. Seems like a long time ago. Yeah, I was hoping to get away with it. But yeah, no, yeah, all of that is true. And I think if the writing is as superior as this writing, it persuades you into a performance. It kind of, without any great conscious thought or examination. I mean, there is conscious thought and examination, but the script itself being so marvelous, it kind of, there is, if your instincts are, sharp enough, you arrive at the right point. And I think, and Oliver, as has been said, was brilliant at creating an atmosphere in which all of that could happen. So, I'm very grateful on all counts.
Il tempo a nostra disposizione è finito. Molte grazie a tutti. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Very nice to meet you.
campo largo hai? Giusto per capirsi.
Guarda, se stai qua, praticamente il corridoio in mezzo è quello che...
Prendi il corridoio.
Corridoio in mezzo.
A posto.
Quindi, ma se stai anche centrale qua sotto...
Sì, tipo vorrei fare una roba del genere.
Sì, è così al limite della testa. Così
Ok,
va bene.
allora magari la facciamo solo con la mano.
Ah, ok.
Ok.
Se stai più in là, quel dove vuoi.
Ok, grazie.
Buongiorno e benvenuti alla conferenza stampa del nostro film in concorso TAR. Prima di cominciare vi presento gli ospiti seduti al tavolo a partire dalla destra in fondo. L'attrice Sophie Kauer, l'attrice Nina Hoss, il regista del film Todd Field, la protagonista del film Cate Blanchett, e l'attrice Naomi Merlin. I'm going to start with a question to Todd, just to frame the conversation. Todd, this film was written with Cate Blanchett in mind. And tell us why and how did you two work together to make it?
All right. Okay.
And this is the mic.
Okay. Thank you so much. Well, I would sort of maybe make. I would answer. It wasn't written with Cate Blanchett in mind. It was written for Cate Blanchett. Yeah, so I mean, there was no, I spent a few months with Cate Blanchett before I started talking to Cate Blanchett, and before Cate Blanchett knew that I was spending my days with Cate Blanchett.
Kate Winslet.
No, it wasn't Kate Winslet. It was Kate Blanchett, yeah, with a C. Yeah.
We have a question.
Hello, everybody. Congratulations. I'll stand up here. Stephen Schaefer, the Boston Herald. This is just a pretty fantastic film and an awesome performance by everybody, but Kate, unbelievable. Todd, would you call this a horror movie? And Kate, would you think this is the most sort of complex and comprehensive character you've done since Elizabeth I, when you did it in 2 different movies? And did your vision or understanding of Lydia change from when Todd talked to you about it to when you finished the film and had created her?
Do I see it as a horror film? I mean, there's an element of horror of a sort, I suppose, depending on how you watch the film. But I see a different film every time I watch it, and I've watched it many times, you know. Yeah, I don't know. Why did you feel as if it was a horror in the film?
I felt at the ending that she was either so self-destructive or fate and her temperament had destroyed her. And you know, when we end up with the brothel scene for her massage, it just seemed like really horrifying.
Yeah, I can see that. I wouldn't disagree with you. It's a very long journey in a very short period of time for her, and you know, we're meeting her essentially for the most part of the film for over about a 3-week plus period of her life, and the end of the film, or the denouement, is very, very short, but much happens, you know. But I don't think that, I mean, this is a character who has a very finite sense of certain self-realization based on a very compressed period of activity for herself, and a lot of score of physical actions that are very definable, right? She has these 2 things that she has to achieve. She's got a book launch, and she's going to finally complete this complete, you know, Mahler sort of cycle with a single orchestra, the orchestra, right? And she's running this gigantic bureaucracy. So this is how we meet her, and she is, she has these external forces that are going on, and we have a limited set of sort of knowledge about what those external forces are and what they mean, and then something happens, right? And her life changes. So yeah, I can. There's certainly, you know, things that she never thought she would see before, probably, and places that she's visiting that she never thought she would visit. But in another way, I think that perhaps she's able to perhaps see the world a little differently, and I find that actually very hopeful.
I mean, it's interesting you use the word horror. Oh, which one? This one?
Yeah.
Do I have to, oh gosh, you've got to do 2 things at once. It's really like conducting. To do it again. So I can do that.
Yeah.
I should have known how to use these things by now. Sorry, apologies. It's interesting you use the word horror. She's definitely haunted by someone, by something, by her past, by herself, by past deeds. You know, you experience someone, you know, I don't want to give the ending away, but someone who's definitely put her past in a box and through her great talent has tried to reinvent herself and be saved and changed and transmogrified by the music. But she's haunted by something. And there's all these elements in the film. It's been so fascinating to work with Todd on this. He keeps saying that there's all these elements, like her 50th birthday, and there was a much stronger haunting presence, you know, when we shot it. But Todd is the king of killing his darlings in the best possible way, and I think that's what makes him a great filmmaker, is that there were so many what we all thought were really integral strands to the movie, like a haunting, that he said, I need to let that bit go. I need to let it exist, in Todd's words, homeopathically within the film. So I think you're sensing the dread. And I think it's when you reach the pinnacle, as you see Lydia doing. She's not on a peak, she's at Mount Olympus, she's at a pinnacle. She knows as an artist, but as a human being, that the only way from next is down. And that takes an enormous amount of courage. And that itself, perhaps, is a horror movie or is horrifying.
There's a question there.
Grande Federico, Xinhua News Agency. Question for Mrs. Blanchett. Can you tell me a little bit how did you prepare for your character? And very simple question. And how do you see this character as strong? Sometimes he's very strong, sometimes very weak, and sometimes even something different. How did you change the tone also, going from moments where she's really leading, and as we see at the end, she's really down?
Look, I think a hallmark of Todd's films, and it's a very spare and special moment when Todd decides to leave the house and make another movie, is that, and so, you know, I think that's why we're all here, right? Is that they're deeply human, and that you are invited in a fly-on-a-wall kind of way, in an unsearingly intimate way with people's inner machinations. And I think that the character, I didn't think about her in those terms, because I knew from the first syllable of the screenplay, which is so beautifully wrought, that it was really complex, and I didn't quite know what it was. And it's a process movie, so the experience of making it was a process, and it evolved and changed. But something that probably didn't change, that I kept returning to, was that she was someone estranged from herself. And I think in a way, probably all the characters are. We all are. It's human. You don't have to be a concert pianist or the conductor of the world's greatest orchestra to experience that feeling. So I think she's all of those things. She's a series of contradictions, and something that Todd wrote in the very first interview of the film is that Lydia Tarr is many things, and you know that she's had a varied career. And when you think about the bookends of her experience, going up the Ucayali Valley with the Shipibo Kanibo people as an ethnomusicologist studying Icaro, to leading one of the world's greatest orchestras conducting Mahler. Now that is a life. And so the thing is, the trick is, or the difficulty is, to try and, you know, weave the psychology in between those two bookends, the provocations that Todd made in the screenplay.
I'd like to quickly follow up on your note of this being a process film and involve the other actors in it, because part of the beauty of watching the film is really leaving this world, which is sort of a privilege, because we don't have access to that level of detail of art's creation very often. So maybe we can start with Sophie, who started off as being a musician and not an actress.
Could I hear the question again?
The question is, how did you penetrate this word of becoming the characters in this world of music? And you come from music, so you had to do the opposite process.
As in how I prepared or how I was... Well, I watched 10 lessons on film acting by Michael Caine on YouTube. That was really good for kind of the technicality of acting. And Todd repeated a lot of those things to me, so I was like, okay, good. No, Michael Caine would not be pleased. But I don't know, I think the dialect helped a lot in getting into character. I think my musical ears really helped me in being able to learn languages in different dialects. We're trained from quite an early age to use our ears in that way. And the dialect coaches were really kind and kind of created a safe space for me to try out lots of different things before I got to set. And then, I mean, who can say they learnt to act from Todd Field and Kate Blanchett? That's quite amazing. And they were kind enough to let me spend my first few days watching the other actors act their scenes. And I picked up a lot from watching Nina, Noemi, Kate. And I don't know, she's very different to me. And as a musician, we're quite used to portraying different characters through our different pieces that we play. You know, you can't spend 5 months preparing for one piece you're going to play and only being in that character. That would be a bit insane. So we're quite used to snapping into a character pretty quickly and having that, I guess being in touch with that emotional side. But I don't know if I can really say that there are that many parallels. I just felt very welcome and safe on the production, and Todd's an incredible collaborator, and I feel very honored that he trusted me so much with it and wanted to share his thoughts and feelings and, you know, the story behind Olga's character and really delve into what she would be feeling and thinking, and I hope that's a good enough answer.
Nina? Yeah, you want to add something? Or
Hello, first of all, I'm so happy to be back here. I love Venice. So I don't know, I don't come from a musical background as Sophie. But to me, that maybe, if I think of this question before, is someone tough or soft or whatever? For me, first and foremost, these two women, Lydia and Sharon, are incredible musicians. And with that comes the need of creative freedom and you know, like you said now, you switch emotions, you switch characters very quickly, very easily, and that was something to me that was incredible to explore with this incredible director and the cast, and of course my most amazing, beautiful partner, Kate Blanchett, which was such a gift to work with and is so inspiring and just amazing to be around her. And yeah, so it helped me, of course, that I could play the piano, that I studied with my amazing teacher, Marie Kogge, the violin before, and that we got to this place that we could actually make music together at a certain point with the wonderful orchestra, the Dresdner Philharmonie, who were also incredibly helpful and invited us in and made this all a most amazing experience we all will never forget, I think. So that was something very special about this whole project. And I have the feeling the whole time we were in a musical rhythm and pace, and we were either driven, because Lydia was so driven, because Todd made her go like this, you know, with the pace. So it's a very musical film to me, because there's a certain drive in it and a very steady pace. And yeah, all of that was incredible to be working with.
Noemi?
Hi, everybody. Buongiorno. So the question is about...
It's about
getting in this...
to this world, yeah. This
world
yeah.
that I didn't know at all. So I was really happy to discover this crazy world, which is normally a really masculine world. And we were all almost women, so it was very pleasant. I didn't know this world, but it was very interesting because my character, Francesca, she's a woman who really wants to become Lydia Ta in a way. She wants to become a conductor, and for now she's just getting, you know, the coffee or planning her schedule. And so I had to embody all the musical aspect and the fact that she loves music so much with never play, never touch an instrument. So we talked about it, and I tried to embody this, you know, with the gesture, the gaze, the look, I really like this character because she's in the shadow, but really patient, but at the same time you don't know if she's an hero in a way or a villain, because in a way she controls also Lydia's life. And actually to prepare this role, I used something really, it's when art imitates life. Like I was Noemi acting, and as a musician, the process of acting is interesting because I think we are our own instruments. And so I was using the fact that Noemi was observing Kate during the whole process of creation when she was bringing to life Lydia in front of me. I was in the in the audience, and I was watching her doing this incredible process, and at the same time Francesca was observing her and learning from her. I mean, Lydia Ta was learning a lot from her. And what I would say is that Kate is completely different from Lydia in the way that she is really, and that helps me a lot because I was nervous at the beginning, and she made everybody feel so comfortable, and she really built with Todd this environment of sharing and respect, which is so important in the process of creation and not always easy to do. So I want to say thank you to you for that, and to you too. Thank you.
There was a question there. Yeah, Ellen, yeah.
Hi, Helen Barlow from the Australian newspaper. Nina, we're old friends, and Kate, I've interviewed you quite a few times and seen you on stage. And I've always said to Nina, you know, that she's the Cate Blanchett of Germany. And I was just wondering, no, in terms of fame, in terms
or
of...
I'm the Nina Hoss of Australia.
Exactly. But
I should be so lucky.
You should be so lucky, great. But I'm just wondering how you got together, what you knew of each other before and how it happened. I'm so happy that it happened.
I've been stalking Nina for about 10 years now, so that's basically it. It's unhealthy, but true.
But could you talk a bit about how you...
How you
met, and if you've seen each other on stage or something?
I'm going, whoosh. You're blushing. I'm blushing.
Yeah, we did. Yeah. We did.
And we both played Lottokotter.
Yes. We played the same part in different venues.
Yeah.
And somehow we have some similarities that we found. Also, and a director, Thomas Ostermeier, that I worked with, and you might work with, and so some friends that we both know. And then it came down to also this wonderful director who kind of made us come together and explore this incredible character study, both of us.
No, I begged both of them, and they said yes. That's what happened. And actually, what happened was Kate and I were talking about who might play Sharon, and both of us. It was like Jinx, 1, 2, 3. We said Nina Haas at the exact same moment, and so it was never going to be anybody but Nina. Should she have said yes?
There's a question right there.
Hello, Marlo Stern with the Daily Beast. This is for the great Kate Blanchett. You know, we last saw you embody a, really dynamic gay character in Carol, and I guess I'm just curious, at a time when LGBT rights are under attack all over the world, including in the United States to a degree, what is the importance for you of really creating these dynamic portraits of gay women?
I think it's important on a societal level that there's, homogeneity in any art form is death, right? But I'm very wary of butting up the word importance with the word art, because I don't see that artistic practice is an educational tool. I think what people do with it after the fact, after the thing, as Todd likes to call it, is made, can be politicized, but disseminated, disgusted, people be disgusted with it, offended by it, inspired by it. But that is outside our control. I think we're compelled to make this thing. It felt urgent and it felt undeniable. But strangely, I didn't think about the character's gender nor her sexuality at all. And I think I love that about the film. It just is. It's a very human portrait. And I think we have perhaps matured enough as a species that we can watch a film like this and not make that the headline issue. It just is. And I think that I found that really, really exciting. And in fact, it wasn't until we started doing press that they said, you have women at the center of this. And I went, oh shit, we do. That didn't cross my mind. And of course, as Todd says, this is a fairy tale of sorts, because there still is no female conductor leading the great old German orchestra around the world. It's still very pyramidal structure, it's very patriarchal. The canon is, what women can conduct, they generally get to conduct more romantic music. Now that landscape is changing. But do we need to keep politicizing it so that change actually becomes continual and normalized, because it's a much more healthy art form? We don't want classical music to become museum pieces. Every time a conductor picks up a score, they are reinventing the wheel with their instrument, the orchestra. So I didn't actually think about the film as being important. I thought about it more as being undeniable and human. I hope that answers your question. And look, sorry, because I can't try to shut me up. But in relation to Carol, when we made it, I had that was really, now I look back on it, no other films like that were being made. Of course, Patricia Highsmith's story was was the first story where someone a woman who loved other women wasn't redeemed by the love of a good man or kill herself. So it's a seminal piece of work in that and many other respects. But at the time Carol was made, I've subsequently realized just how important it became to people. But at the time of making it, it was just something that we had to make. And so I'm not interested in agitprop. And this, whilst there's a lot of hot button topics that come up in this movie, it is not about any of those things. They're plot devices, they're the texture, because the film is made in the time in which we live, and it is being viewed by an audience in the time in which we live. And so there are a lot of explosive things in the film, but without wanting to sound too highfalutin, it's much more existential, I think, for me than that.
There's a question here. She's been waiting for a while.
Yes.
Good morning, I'm Alessandra Tommasi from Lego Italy. My question is to Mrs. Blanchett. I would like to ask you, since this movie is also about the dynamics of powers and the injustice of powers, I would like to ask you, maybe at the beginning of your career, you have felt powerless somehow, and how did you react to that, and how is different now for you? Thank you.
Well, the landscape has certainly changed. You know, in the dawn of time when I entered the film industry, which is like a very long time ago, you know, and then there was a sense, I remember my husband saying to me in an incredibly supportive way, you know, I worked in the theatre and I never expected to have a film career, that, you know, enjoy it, babe, you've got 5 years. If you're lucky. And that was true for women. And I think that there are a lot of people who have been changing that landscape. Not only female trailblazing actors who have pushed the boundaries, not only through, you know, they've taken opportunities in smaller roles to make those roles big and important. But still, the interesting thing is, we had such amazing men in, you know, alongside us, and a male leading it. You know, this film wasn't about women; it was about human and being human. But it is still, I think, and I don't know if it's the way men are talked to in the film industry. But when you have a woman, they're often called strong women. But I think that what people mean is that they simply have a major impact on the narrative, not that they're muscly and can lift elephants, although maybe they can. But it's very hard to get our brothers in so-called quote-unquote Hollywood to play the supporting roles that we will very, very happily play in a good story with a good director. That still is difficult.
I think we have time for one more, and yes, the mic.
Thomas Cardinali per Cusano Media Group. Per la signora Blanchett le volevo chiedere, il film parla anche del rapporto tra Lidia e Francesca, e lei magari all'inizio della sua carriera c'è stato un momento in cui era Francesca, cioè nel vero senso della parola, e come fa un'attrice a switchare? Qual è il momento che ha portato lei a switchare nella sua carriera, permettendole poi, ecco, di spiccare il volo, diciamo? Grazie.
I think I'm still in the process of becoming who I am. I mean, I don't think, I've never thought of my identity as being a static thing. You know, you're constantly evolving. I mean, that's the wonderful thing about humans, is we have the ability to change, both individually and collectively, which gives me hope about the future of the planet, you know, that we can turn this ship around. Have I been Francesca? Do you mean, it's a very interesting relationship. The power dynamic is, I mean, when you work with people, either in, you know, in any context, it's very, very, very intimate. And I have had intimacies with people, of course, like anybody, that have been betrayed or sold down the river, or you've been disappointed. I haven't been anyone's personal assistant, although I do sometimes feel like I'm my 14-year-old's personal assistant. But it's a very particular job. And at its core, no matter what business you're in, discretion is everything. And so I think, you know, I think something that's really primal in their relationship is trust. And I think that is not, you know, as a metaphor for the film, trust is really important in any creative endeavor, in any, you know, in any relationship, whether it be, you know, interpersonal or professional. And when that trust is broken, some people can forgive and some people can't, depending on, you know, how they grew up, what their set of circumstances were. And so I had this whole thing in my head, and we talked a lot. That's a wonderful thing about working with Todd and having the chance for all of us to rehearse. We talked a lot about backstory. And I think that Lydia Tarr was badly, badly bullied. So she has, betrayal is a big thing for her, and trust. You know, in order to trust people is a major act of faith. And so forgiveness is quite difficult, I think. But I don't know if that answers your question.
Unfortunately, they came twice to tell me that we have no time. So I want to thank our guests for being here.
Do you know that performance artist who got down in the 60s.
Buongiorno, benvenuti alla conferenza stampa del nostro film in concorso BARDO. E prima di cominciare vi presento gli ospiti al tavolo a partire dalla destra in fondo, e scusate ma sono tanti quindi ho bisogno di vedere dove sono. Allora, a partire da destra il compositore Bryce Desser. E il production designer del film Eugenio Caballero. Il protagonista del film Daniel Jiménez Cacho. E prima di lui l'attore Iker Sánchez Solano. E il regista del film Alejandro González Iñárritu. E l'attrice Griselda Siciliani. E l'attrice Ximena Lamarid. E scusate, adesso arrivo al compositore, no l'ho già detto, il co-sceneggiatore Nicolas Giacobone, grazie Nicolas, e il produttore Stasi Persky-Canis, vicino a me. Allora, comincio, I start with a question for Alejandro and then I send it to the public. Alejandro, this is your first film in Mexico after many years. And so it's not only like a production that was there, it's a state of mind. And can you describe this journey for us?
Buenas tardes a todos. Si no les importa, buenas tardes a todos. Si no les importa, vamos a hablar en español. Gracias. Sí, hoy curiosamente es un aniversario para mi familia y para mí. El 1 de septiembre del 2001 dejamos México y nos fuimos a vivir a Los Ángeles, a los Estados Unidos. Y durante esos, para nosotros cuando salimos hubo una gran ilusión y muchos planes, y pensábamos irnos por un año, pero pasaron 21. Y creo que ese evento es fundamental para el origen de esta película, porque lo que más se hace presente cuando uno deja su país es la ausencia de ese país, se hace presente todos los días de una forma distinta, y por eso digo que México no es un país, sino es un estado mental para mí. Y creo que cada nación, cada país es finalmente un estado mental. Son las historias que nos han contado, que nos contamos de nosotros mismos, pero cuando uno toma perspectiva y distancia y tiempo, esas historias, esos estados mentales empiezan a disolverse, a transformarse, y es parte de la exploración de esta película, una interpretación de esa ausencia y de cómo cuando uno regresa de nuevo, como me pasó cuando estaba filmando la película, como un espejo, fue como encontrar a un nuevo amigo que fue de una forma y nunca quizás lo fue, pero lo encuentro distinto y la gente me encuentra a mí también distinto porque muchas cosas han pasado. Y esta película es esa reinterpretación emocional de una memoria. Eso es un poco lo que creo.
Thomas Cardinali per Cusano Media Group, la mia domanda è per il regista. Ho apprezzato moltissimo il film, in particolare mi ha colpito...
Sorry, es que let me, it's in Italian, which channel should be, which channel to understand? En el 4? Yeah.
Sí, ¿cuál está español?
So the translation is in... ok, aquí me están hablando español, ¿verdad? Sí. Ok. A ver, ok, perdona, otra vez.
Ok, Thomas Cardinali per Cusano Media Group, ho apprezzato molto il film, in particolare mi ha colpito tanto il dialogo tra il protagonista e il padre. A un certo punto gli dice che il successo ha la capacità di avvelenare. Lei, che di successo ne ha avuto molto, si è mai sentito avvelenato da questo successo nel corso della sua carriera? Grazie.
De hecho, esa frase es una frase de mi padre. Mi padre tuvo una relación con el éxito complicada, porque tuvo éxito heredado y lo perdió. Y fue exitoso a su manera, pero no de la forma que él pensaba. Y para mi padre, el éxito tenía dos riesgos presentes y constantes e inevitables. Uno era la tentación al orgullo, a la soberbia, que te intoxicaba. Y por otro lado, la inevitable pérdida del éxito te lleva al dolor. Entonces, el tener éxito era ya una condena a saber que lo perderás y vendrá tiempo difícil para aceptar eso. Entonces, por eso mi padre siempre nos decía que con el éxito hay que darle un trago, hay que hacer unos buches y escupirlo porque si no te intoxicaba. Y es una frase que a mí me parece importante, para mí fue importante, y es verdad que el éxito en ocasiones, aunque parece difícil de entenderlo, porque parece una queja y no, el éxito lo deseas, pero al mismo tiempo también puede crearte una cantidad de obligaciones, expectativas, responsabilidades de uno propio y de la gente, que conlleva en sí una cantidad de retos. Y sí, el éxito de pronto también te exige como persona cosas que dejas a veces y cambian las prioridades y hay que saber soltearlo. Entonces sí, el éxito para mí también ha sido un aprendizaje, un camino de aprendizaje. Y el fracaso también, no es que sea exitoso siempre, pero ese recorrido es importante y esa frase quise incluirla como un momento importante del conocimiento de mi padre, que le dice a Silverio, porque Silverio es evidentemente una persona que manifiesta esa sensación de que el peor de sus fracasos ha sido el éxito, ¿no? Por las cosas que ha intercambiado. Pero creo que Daniel también podría ahondar más en esto.
Buenos días, María Guerra del programa La Escribe España. Bueno, felicidades por esta película monumental, que además como periodistas uno siente que va a decir la tontería, pero bueno. Usted, yo recuerdo en Cannes, en el año de Beautiful, decía que esa mañana de presentar la película sentía que era como dar a luz ante 2.000 personas. Me pregunto cómo se siente usted hoy ante este parto tan especial. Y luego también me gustaría preguntarle a Daniel Jiménez Cacho, aparte de darle la enhorabuena, ¿cómo ha sido la construcción de este trasunto, de este alter ego de Iñárritu? Gracias.
Esta película, a diferencia de las otras, no la hice con la cabeza, la hice con todo mi corazón. Y a partir de ahí, el parto es más sensible, pero también muy liberador. Porque la digestión de todas estas experiencias, memorias, es una interpretación de una realidad que sucede entre un evento, entre la imaginación de ese evento, y es el lugar de en medio, es el bardo. Y cuando revisitas eso, de tantas cosas que se han vivido en la superficie, en el consciente, y otras que han estado atrapadas por el muro del tiempo en el subconsciente, y las visitas hacia adentro, digeriéndolas, acomodándolas, puede haber mucho dolor, pero también el rescatar muchas alegrías. Y sin sentido, o sea, es un viaje emocional, no tiene nada de autobiográfico. Esto podría ser más bien una hemografía, o sea, más bien una biografía emocional que no pretende ser verdadera, sino honesta en ese nivel, porque la memoria no tiene verdad, tiene certidumbre emocional, como dice Silverio. Y desde ahí hice esta película, con mucha incertidumbre, evidentemente con mucho coraje, valor, podría decir también, de de poder explorar esas cosas, tratar de darles un sentido para que se revelaran cosas hacia mí, y lo más difícil es compartirlas. Y es lo que sucedió hoy. O sea, cuando compartes eso, estás compartiendo tu corazón, que es el área más delicada. Entonces sí es un parto muy particular.
Yo le contesto.
Sí.
Esto fue un trabajo muy diferente a lo que yo había hecho antes. Aquí, pues como lo acaban de oír, el abordaje que quería hacer Alejandro, pues me lo transmitió a mí y me dijo, no hagamos una cosa racional, de diseño de personaje, de arco dramático, de aquí está el clímax, acá está el de este, nada de eso, no lo leas, no lo estudies. No me lo quería dar, entonces le dije, no, pero sí, déjame leerlo. Bueno, una vez, léelo una vez, lo leí 2 veces. Pero efectivamente, así me dispuse. Y para que pasara esto, se necesitaba una relación de mucha confianza. Porque pues no sabes exactamente a dónde vas. Si solo te estás disponiendo a que pase. Que esto pase a través tuyo y suceda. Hay que tener mucha confianza. Y esto se dio muy rápido. Tan rápido que yo estaba sospechando que había algo no normal, porque yo en general pues he sido educado como los católicos, que para subir a la montaña hay que partirse el alma y llegar con las rodillas rotas y decir, ¡ah, llegué! Y aquí no, esto era una cosa que se empezó a dar así. Yo decía, no, pero algo, no, exígete más, busca más, tiene que haber, se te va a ir y no. Le dije, no, ya, calma. Esto es así. Hay que simplemente permitir que suceda, ¿no? Yo nada más estudiaba bien mis líneas de memoria y nada más. O sea, no construí un personaje. En mis meditaciones decía, ¿cómo me siento hoy? Pues así, de esta manera, pues así va a ser el personaje hoy. Y así día con día, volteaba yo a verlo y me decía, bien, pues bien, vámonos, lo que sigue, y así. Y ya se verá después, ¿no? Ahí sí nos conectamos, creo que de una manera, pues hasta mágica, siento yo, ¿no?
C'è il signore là in fondo. Sì.
Salve, Alberto Fassina, Mattino di Padova. Una domanda che vuole essere non una critica, ma proprio la domanda più laica possibile. Alcuni registi, tra cui lei, state facendo con Netflix dei film importanti che riguardano le vostre vite, dei film anche con una lunghezza importante. Come vi fa sentire l'idea che probabilmente nelle nostre case ormai ci sono degli schermi, degli impianti audio bellissimi e vediamo benissimo i film anche a casa, però che questi film potrebbero essere interrotti durante la visione per alzarsi, per rispondere al telefono, per fare qualcosa, cioè non c'è quel raccoglimento che ti dà la sala. E lei, come altri suoi colleghi, state facendo dei film un po' della vostra vita e c'è questo, come vi fa sentire insomma l'idea che il vostro film sia interrotto durante la visione per tanti motivi? In Italia, se non sbaglio, quando arrivò la TV commerciale che metteva gli spot nei film, Fellini, che poi fece degli spot, diceva che trovava incomprensibile l'idea che si interrompesse un film. Quindi come state? Poi volevo dirle che c'è stato un periodo della mia vita in cui facevo lo stesso sogno con cui si apriva il suo film, di salti che sembravano dei voli, è stato bello condividerlo.
Bueno, qué bueno que compartimos los sueños, eso. Esta película es un sueño. Decía Buñuel que el cine es un sueño dirigido y esta película para mí fue eso. El cine y los sueños, el cine no tiene tiempo, los sueños no tienen tiempo y ahí las fronteras son indescifrables entre ambos. Entonces el cine es eso y esta película es eso. Respecto a... En este caso yo me siento muy agradecido con Netflix porque no solamente me dio un apoyo y una libertad absoluta, sino que también ahora esta película que se estrena en México va a salir por 7 semanas en una gran cantidad de salas y en Estados Unidos y en el mundo entero, en todo el mundo de habla hispana. Y eso es una cosa sin precedentes que aprecio muchísimo, porque no solamente hubo el apoyo y la libertad, sino la generosidad de este regalo a que la gente viva una experiencia cinematográfica, porque se ama el cine también de la misma forma. Entonces eso por un lado lo hace para mí muy especial y estoy profundamente agradecido por este gesto de excepción que se hace, que creo que se celebrará, porque creo que profundamente es una película en el sentido que pertenece ahí. Sin embargo, yo te quiero decir que toda mi vida, mi generación, teníamos cines de arte, donde se podía ver cine de grandes autores. La gran mayoría de los cines estaban siempre con los blockbusters. Pero cuando yo estudiaba cine, prácticamente fuera de las muestras cinematográficas, no sé si te acuerdas, había la muestra de cine, pero fuera de eso, yo a Bergman, a Fellini, a Buñuel, a todos los grandes cineastas, los vi en la televisión. Y los vi en VHS, con una calidad terrible. Y paraba para ir al baño, es decir, y todos estamos destinados no solamente a la televisión, sino al teléfono y en 10 años a una pantalla invisible. O sea, lo que quiero decir, lo que sobrevive siempre serán las ideas. La película es la película. El medio en el que se utiliza, evidentemente, el mejor es la catedral del cine, que es donde nacen los niños, el útero. Sin embargo, yo he apreciado una gran cantidad de cine también en la televisión y creo que todo el cine clásico pues lo vemos hoy en televisión. O sea, es muy difícil que todo el cine del mundo esté todo el tiempo en pantallas. Entonces, es una forma de escoger y se harán con las películas ciclos en cines, pero la verdad es que es difícil discutir eso. O sea, creo que es imposible ir contra una corriente y contra medios que se están desarrollando cada vez con más calidad. Repito, inolvidable la calidad. Yo tengo una colección de VHS que ahora son invisibles. O sea, decía, ¿cómo podía haber apreciado esta película? Se veía toda borrosa y ahora ha mejorado muchísimo. Entonces, bueno, esa es parte para mí del sistema que estamos viviendo y que creo que también da la oportunidad que haya acceso ahora con una tecnología impresionante de calidad para tener acceso en cualquier momento a las grandes obras, ¿no? Y eso también es un valor brutal que antes no existía. Tenías que hacer malabares para conseguir películas y verlas con una pésima calidad. Entonces, me parece que es lo que sucede.
La señora.
Hola, ¿no se escucha? Oh. Milena Fernández, Costa Rica. Es una peli magna, es un homenaje al cronista. Bueno, los primeros cronistas fueron esos conquistadores. Sobre los conquistadores, esta peli, sin el diálogo de Hernán Cortés, no se comprenderían muchas cosas de América Latina. ¿Cree que las venas de América Latina siguen abiertas? Una. Y luego, como migrante de primera clase, que es él, bueno, también yo soy una migrante de primera clase, ¿cuántas cosas ha dejado atrás de México, digamos, que echa de menos, que tal vez no hemos visto en la peli y que quisiera compartir con nosotros? Y gracias por la peli de nuevo.
Gracias. Sí, yo creo que repito, los países, toda nación, es básicamente una gran cantidad de historias, narrativas, mitos que nos dan y nos introducen desde niños, que nos dan un sentimiento de pertenencia, un sentimiento de identidad y que nos dan un poder colectivo. Sin embargo, y cada país tiene eso, cada país tiene esas historias, pero y tiene que ver mucho que esas historias las vivimos a través y las filtramos siempre a través de nuestro sistema de valores, nuestra religión, nuestra geografía. Entonces, un mismo evento como la conquista de América está, digamos, fragmentado en sus realidades, que nunca existió, sino simplemente está percibido y filtrado de dos maneras, ¿no? El conquistador y el conquistado. Esa eterna digamos, interpretación de ese evento, de dónde se viva, de dónde se cuente, filtrado por nuestro reducido sistema nervioso de lo que hemos podido entender. Esas historias, cuando se cuestionan o en el momento que dejas tu país, puedes tener un poco de distancia, de perspectiva y empiezas a ver las cosas con un poco más de claridad o más confusión y se disuelven esas historias. Y las historias que tú te has contado a ti mismo, las que te han contado, y esa incertidumbre me parece que es parte de lo que el personaje de Silverio, como periodista, que siempre ha estado buscando la verdad, se da cuenta que no hay verdad, que todo es ficción. O sea, finalmente son esas narrativas que se van disolviendo en el tiempo. Y todo en la película es eso. La película habla de la arena, habla del agua, habla de estos elementos que todo el tiempo están en constante transformación, que se le mete al departamento y el agua se mete a sus sueños y al tren y se traga al hijo en el mar. O sea, todo esto se convierte como en un estado mental en donde esas historias de las naciones, así como su propia narrativa que se empieza a disolver de lo que se ha contado él de sí mismo, de sus memorias, me parece que eso es importante plantearlo como cuando nos enseñan historia, ¿quién te cuenta esa historia? Y yo creo que esa discusión que tienen Hernán Cortés y Silverio Gama con un buen cigarrillo, me parece que es la discusión eterna, que desde que soy niño la escucho y cuando tengo discusiones con mis amigos españoles me cuentan su versión y nosotros les contamos lo que nos destruyeron, pero ellos dicen lo que trajimos y ellos dicen lo que nos... Entonces, y las dos son... Hay una certeza emocional de ambos, o sea, es decir, nadie está mintiendo, pero en la realidad nunca la vamos a conocer y esa es la esencia de Bardo. O sea, yo no estoy diciendo lo que sucedió, estoy diciendo que están en estas penumbras del amanecer en donde quieren disectar algo que nunca se va a saber. Entonces sí me parece que la revisitación que hace Silverio de su propia historia es no solamente la de él, sino lo que ha entendido siempre como una historia. Eso es lo que te puedo decir de eso, del encuentro de Cortés, ¿no?
Rubén Peralta, de República Dominicana, y represento a Hollywood Foreign Press. Yo he seguido tu carrera desde que empezaste y algo que sí he notado es tu puesta en escena es muy fuerte, pero también tus guiones han cambiado desde Amores Perros hasta ahora son más personales. ¿Por qué son tan personales en este tiempo, desde Birdman, por ejemplo, y ahora? Y para el cast, ¿cómo fue la conversación que tuvieron con Iñárritu a la hora de crear los personajes? Porque se siente la química de que son una real familia.
A mí me gustaría que primero cada uno de ellos te dijera cómo, desde su punto de vista, cómo vivieron y cómo trabajaron en los personajes. A ver, Iker.
Hola. Pues creo que fue algo que se dio muy natural. Creo que desde el principio hubo un momento para mí en lo personal que definió un antes y un después. La química siempre estuvo desde el primer instante, pero cuando nos fuimos a la hacienda un par de días, creo que fue un momento muy lindo en donde pudimos ensayar y explorar nuestras personalidades y conocernos de una forma mucho más íntima. Y creo que eso hizo que hubiera una química mucho más natural en escena. Y personalmente yo intenté identificar todos estos puntos dentro de las personalidades de las personas del cast con las personas dentro de mis miembros de mi familia. Y eso hizo que las emociones que se sintieron y que los textos que se dijeron en escena fueran muchísimo más auténticos y que se vieran con la belleza que se vieron y que se vivieron también.
Yo ya dije.
¿Quieres empezar?
¿Cris?
Sí.
¿Cris?
Okay. Hola. Como dijo Iker, siempre estuvo esa química ahí desde los castings, desde los últimos callbacks que tuvimos. Yo ya estaba junto a Daniel, había conocido a Iker, Gris todavía no, pero ya cuando nos conocimos, creo que fue en la hacienda que nos conocimos todos juntos por primera vez. Nos quedamos 2 noches en medio de la nada, en un lugar solo para nosotros, para ensayar, y ahí pues ahí creció la química. Comíamos juntos, no solo era, trabajamos, comemos juntos, desayunamos juntos, platicamos, nos reímos, Y algo que siempre nos dio Alejandro desde el principio era confianza. Y con esa confianza pudimos confiar en nosotros mismos para solo vivir la experiencia, como dijo Iker, muy presentemente. O sea, todo fue muy presente. Y solo confiar, porque ya teníamos ese apoyo familiar. Y yo, o sea, cuando veo a Daniel, digo, papá. Y cuando veo a Griselda en la calle o algo, digo, mamá. Y, o sea, es mi familia, especialmente ahorita que estamos viviendo esto.
Sí, hola. Bueno, con la química de la familia, un poco esto que cuentan todos sucedió. A veces no sucede con los compañeros, hay que trabajar igual y por ahí se generan escenas buenísimas también. Pero cuando sucede la química y la amorosidad entre los compañeros, que tenemos que contar y transmitir un vínculo tan profundo como el familiar, es un regalo. Eso, cuando pasa hay que solamente festejar. Después preguntabas por la conversación con Alejandro acerca de los personajes. Lo primero que conversé con Alejandro, antes de mi último casting incluso, que fue con Daniel ya, fue acerca del tono de la película, el tono de los personajes, el tono de actuación, ¿no? Y un poco eso es lo que él me transmitió, que le gustaba de mi manera de actuar, que era el tono que tenía, venía bien, ¿no? Era a favor del tono que necesitaba la película. Después, en mi último casting, conocí a Dani y fue amor a primera vista, ¿no? No nos conocíamos y enseguida empezamos a trabajar. Trabajamos mucho durante ese casting, casi muchas horas, y parecía ya un ensayo, parecía un vínculo de dos compañeros actores que han trabajado juntos y que se reencuentran. Algo así sentimos y eso nos transmitía Alejandro cuando nos veía trabajar. Así que yo siento que desde muy temprano se empezó a generar este vínculo de a granitos de arena entre nosotros cuatro y que pudimos profundizar con la guía de Alejandro, que creo que tiene una visión, un buen gusto y un conocimiento del oficio del actor que me parece que hace que los vínculos cuenten lo que tienen que contar en esta historia. Así que eso.
Me gustaría nada más para contestar la primera parte, que es lo de la puesta en escena. Creo que esto tiene que ver, quiero mencionar un par de cosas que son importantes. La puesta en esta película, como los sueños, cuando soñamos, hay imágenes, el subconsciente tiene una gran precisión. Si nos maneja y nos proyecta y se manifiesta una imagen en un sueño, tiene un sentido profundo. Si es una abeja, o es un jaguar, o es una mariposa, o es un ancestro que se nos presenta en un lugar que no tiene nada que ver a distancia y el tiempo. Hay algo que está ahí. Y cuando contamos un sueño a alguien y nos levantamos con ese sueño en la cabeza, lo podemos relatar con gran precisión. Lo importante en los sueños son los detalles. ¿Por qué una mosca la tenía aquí y me estaba comiendo el dedo? Una mosca me comía el dedo, no aquí ni aquí. ¡Ay! Esta película que partió desde ahí, las imágenes se fueron apareciendo con una gran precisión, pero quiero mencionar que hay una persona aquí importantísima que es Nicolás Jacobone, que junto con él, desde Beautiful, he venido construyendo, ya este es nuestro tercer trabajo juntos, y que junto con Nicolás pudimos desde el guión construir con una gran precisión todos estos elementos que fuimos disectando y que él casi se convirtió en mi terapista para poder entrar en esa precisión brutal desde el escrito, como estaba escrito, que lo tenía muy, muy claro. A partir de ahí, todas las necesidades de producción a través de Stacy, que todas y cada una de las locaciones eran de una gran precisión y poder construir todo este mundo con esta complejidad y riqueza. A partir de ahí el trabajo de Eugenio, que también con una gran precisión teníamos muy claro esta construcción de cada set, cada lugar estaba absolutamente medido por pasos, por palabras, por movimientos de cámara, y fue como un ballet, en donde no hubo nada improvisado. es la película con más control que he tenido que realizar, absoluto, riguroso, casi obsesivo, que desde el inicio fue así, no hubo nada que se improvisara, todo estaba absolutamente desde el principio estructurado, y estas escenas que parecen líquidas y que se mueven flotando, para lograr eso hay que desaparecer todo lo que, toda la herrería, digamos, que está atrás de todo esto, incluyendo la música con Bryce. Cada pieza musical se fue construyendo con mucha anticipación para servir el tono de cada momento. Lo que quiero decir con esto es que es una película absolutamente preconcebida, estructurada con una gran precisión. Y finalmente, cuando no importa qué tan grande sea la sinfonía, tú como cineasta de alguna forma estás escribiendo un guion y estás componiendo algo, como si fuera si pasamos a la música, si estás componiendo una sinfonía, no importa qué grande o compleja sea, siempre una sinfonía la compones para un instrumento o para ciertos instrumentos. Y si esos instrumentos no tienen el tono y no están brutalmente afinados y no tienen un virtuosismo, por más hermosa que sea la sinfonía, se acaba. Y para mí, el haber trabajado con Daniel y con todos ellos como actores fue trabajar con los mejores instrumentistas y músicos para poder llevar a cabo con esa precisión y belleza y profundidad esto que era un intento de esta complejidad. Pero es gracias al trabajo de todos ellos que hicimos esta película. Y Carla Luna, que está ahí sentada, que no ocupo aquí, pero quiero también dar el crédito a Carla y a Stacy, que fueron quienes produjeron la película.
Abbiamo tempo per una domanda sola, mi dispiace. Signora.
Cataluña, al fondo, en la tarima, aquí. Alejandro, has dicho que esto ha sido una experiencia liberadora, entonces te quería preguntar hasta qué punto te ha transformado escribir, rodar y hoy parir la película, y si eso se va a ver reflejado en tu obra a partir de ahora, si vamos a ver a un Iñárritu director liberado y haciendo cosas diferentes o no.
Pues la verdad es que difícil contestarte esa pregunta, no sé qué voy a hacer ahora. Llevaba yo 7 años sin hacer una película, lo último que hice fue una instalación de realidad virtual de carne y arena, pero no había tocado una cámara de cine en mucho tiempo. No sé cuándo lo voy a volver a hacer, la verdad es que no tengo un plan. Sí fue una película liberadora en el sentido, creo que va a ser, cada vez me interesa menos la realidad en el cine, porque creo que el cine es precisamente el instrumento más poderoso para soñar. O sea, creo que el elemento, como decía, en los sueños no existe el tiempo, tampoco en el cine existe el tiempo. De hecho, ambos medios, digamos, uno dentro de nuestra cabeza y uno que lo que hace la cámara es la fragmentación del tiempo y el espacio, cosa que en nuestra vida es lineal, aburrida y temporalmente presente. Lo que hacemos en el cine es esa mezcla de tiempo y fragmentar el tiempo y el espacio. Me parece que es la oportunidad de la reinterpretación de la realidad, ¿no? Entonces, eso es lo que más me interesa. Creo que sería muy difícil para mí ahora hacer una película con acto 1, acto 2, acto 3, el plot point, quién mató a quién. O sea, como que esas construcciones mentales me interesan ya muy poco en realidad. Me parece que es mucho más interesante los recursos que te ofrece el cine para poder explorar. Y esto, la verdad es que hay grandes maestros que lo han hecho, ¿no? Desde Buñuel, Jodorowsky, Fellini, Roy Anderson, Max Ophuls, en fin, hay tantos maestros que nos han enseñado, Haas, el polaco, o sea, nos han enseñado tanto a utilizar este recurso como algo liberador, que me atrae un poco más y me aburre un poco más la realidad, que no creo que exista. Para mí la realidad es limbo. Y sí, a partir de ahora, creo que eso te lo da la edad. Creo que la realidad te hace dudar más de muchas cosas y el cine es el instrumento para la certeza de la incertidumbre para mí, a partir de ahora sí.
I think this is a perfect cue I'm told we have no time, but Alessandro's words are perfect to close this, and I want to thank everyone for being here and for bringing the film to Venice. Thank you.
Gracias.